Thank you for joining us today. Today we're talking about Be Smart, a program to bring together parents and all adults concerned with guns, kids, and safety. My name is Jean Fontaine. I got involved with the Be Smart program when I met a woman whose 4-year-old son was playing with his cousins and was unintentionally shot when the children found a loaded gun in the bedroom. She shared with me her story and how knowing about Be Smart would have made a difference. In the United States, firearms are the second leading cause of death for children and the first leading cause of death for Black children. As this slide shows, nearly 1,600 children under the age of 18 are killed with guns in the United States every year, an average of 4 children every day. When children in America are killed with guns, the majority of those deaths, 52%, are homicides. That's more than 800 children per year. Additionally, more than 600 children die by firearm suicide each year, and nearly 100 are unintentionally shot and killed. We know that approximately 4.6 million children in the United States live in a household with at least one loaded, unlocked gun. While school shootings and mass shootings typically make national headlines, the reality is that for children under the age of 13, gun homicides most frequently occur in the home. And one study showed that nearly 90% of unintentional shooting deaths and injuries among children under the age of 15 occur in the home. What's more, we know that in incidents of gunfire on school grounds, up to 80% of shooters under the age of 18 obtained the gun or guns they used from their home or the homes of relatives or friends. I know this is an emotional issue, and we may come from different walks of life. You're here as part of the Parents Academy, and so you are all parents. Some are gun owners, and some are not. You may have had a personal experience with guns, and some of you may have even been impacted by gun violence. We believe that most gun owners want to be responsible gun owners, so we are here today to talk about what all of us, gun owners and non-gun owners alike, can do to make sure children don't have unsupervised access to guns. For now, let's leave politics at the door and agree on these 3 things. 1, we all want kids to grow up happy and healthy. 2, we each have the right to make responsible decisions about how to protect our homes, families, and communities, including whether or not to have a gun in our home. 3, if we can prevent even one child gun death or injury, it's our responsibility to do so. We're not here to talk about laws or policies, so let's set those aside. I want to take a few minutes to talk specifically about what the consequences of unsecured guns looks like. On this slide, you'll see just a few headlines from stories from across the country, although we know there are many incidents that go unreported. Some of you may remember from the news the first story in the top left. In January of 2018, there was a school shooting in Kentucky at Marshall County High School. More than a dozen students were shot and wounded. Two of them, Bailey Holt and Preston Cope, were killed. The 16-year-old shooter had gained access to his stepfather's unsecured pistol from his bedroom. The next tragedy took place in May of 2018. A 4-year-old boy from Louisa, Virginia, unintentionally shot his 2-year-old brother Tyson after accessing an unsecured gun that was kept high in an upper cabinet. The next headline on the bottom left illustrates that when kids are looking to carry guns out of fear, easy access to guns can help facilitate the cycle of violence. Like 17-year-old Zeke of Jackson, Mississippi, who told the Jackson Free Press that some young people in his community carried guns out of fear of being robbed or shot, and believe that having a gun will allow them to defend themselves. Let me also point out our final story about 13-year-old Mikey from Brewster, New York. Mikey was a friendly, popular 8th grader. He was an expert bowler, an avid athlete, and he loved video games. In January 2013, Mikey came home from school and took one of his father's unlocked loaded guns and shot himself. His family knew Mikey to be a happy kid, and they don't believe he had planned to die that day. But with easy access to a loaded gun, Mikey made an impulsive decision that tragically became a fatal one. All 4 of these stories show the fallout of when young people get their hands on unsecured guns. No story is quite the same, but all are tragic and all are preventable. It's important to remember that even if you are practicing secure storage, or if you don't have a gun in your home, you can't be sure about other homes. You can't be sure about how responsible other people are being. And that's where our Be Smart program becomes useful. What can we do? We can learn to be smart. Let's start with S. Secure your guns in homes and vehicles. 13 million households with children contain at least one gun, and the majority of children in gun-owning households know where the gun is stored. And we already know that in incidents of gunfire on school grounds, the majority of shooters under the age of 18 obtained the gun or guns from their home or the home of relatives or friends, like the tragedy that unfolded at Marshall County High School in Kentucky that we touched on earlier. So what do I mean by securing guns? Guns should be stored locked and unloaded, with ammunition stored separately. Hiding a gun is not securing a gun, and we know that can lead to tragedy. We talked about the 4-year-old Virginia boy who unintentionally shot his 2-year-old brother after accessing an unsecured gun that was just stored high in the upper cabinet. And remember Zeke from Mississippi, who spoke of the complicated safety reasons that push some teens to want a gun. Keep in mind that kids may feel a variety of emotions about guns, from curiosity to fascination to fear. As adults, it's our responsibility to prevent easy access to guns. Research also finds that secure storage is associated with a decreased risk of firearm suicide and unintentional firearm injury among children. One study showed that households that locked both firearms and ammunition had a 78% lower risk of self-inflicted firearm injuries among children and teenagers, and an 85% lower risk of unintentional firearm injuries. Some commonly used secure storage practices include using a cable lock, lockbox, or firearm safe, as well as storing firearms unloaded with ammunition stored separately. Unsecured guns also contribute to a staggering number of guns stolen each year. An estimated 380,000 guns are stolen from private gun owners every year, and gun owners were 3 times more likely to have a gun stolen if they carried a gun in the last month. Research also suggests that nearly 1/4 of stolen guns are taken from cars. So storing a gun in a glove compartment or underneath a car seat is not considered secure storage. M, model responsible behavior. Every law-abiding adult has the right to decide whether or not to have a gun in the home. But you can't rely on curious kids not to find a gun. As we saw on the slide before, one study showed that the majority of children are aware of where their parents store their guns, and that more than 1/3 reported handling their parents' guns, many doing so without the knowledge of their parents. Nearly 1/4 of parents did not know that their children had handled the gun in their home. It is always an adult's responsibility to prevent unauthorized access to guns, not a curious child's responsibility to avoid guns. Talk to your kids about gun safety, but remember that's a precaution, not a guarantee. One study found that young children who go through a week-long gun safety training are just as likely as children with no training to approach and play with a handgun when they find one. Modeling responsible behavior means that smart adults make sure that kids don't have the opportunity to access guns. That said, you can't control the environment that your child is in all the time. So you should teach them not to touch a gun if they come across one, real or pretend, and give them the tools to get out of a dangerous situation and to alert an adult. As an adult, it's your responsibility to do everything you can to prevent them from getting in a dangerous situation to begin with. As we mentioned, there are approximately 4.6 million children in the U.S. living in a household with at least one loaded, unlocked gun. That's why you need to ask about firearms in other homes your child visits. The A in ask. When you send a child off on a play date, if your child has an allergy or is afraid of dogs, of course you will ask questions to make sure your child won't be in danger. Or you might ask about TV or screen time or video games. And for older children, you might well ask if there will be adults at the home. Asking about guns in the home should be as natural as asking about any other safety issue. But it can seem awkward at first. So try making it part of your general safety conversation. You might try asking via email or text if you're uncomfortable at first. Let's talk about recognizing the role of guns in suicide, the R. Access to a gun can mean the difference between life and death. We saw that in Mikey's story. As our children get older, you may need to consider taking another look at your storage methods. If you've been using a simple cable lock, you may want to think about getting a gun safe. We all know that can be, how curious children can be. So as they get older and are more resourceful, we need to act accordingly. Also, we need to know if your loved one is in distress. At that time, you might want to consider temporarily removing a gun from your home. Take this information into consideration. Most people who attempt suicide do not die unless they use a gun. In fact, 90% of suicide attempts with a gun result in death, a much higher fatality rate than any other means of self-harm. This contributes to the fact that 40% of child suicides involve a gun. If you consider removing a gun from your home while your child is in crisis, you might temporarily store your guns in the home of a friend or family member. To manage risk for that friend or family member, you should lock any guns that you transfer and not provide a key or code. The National Youth Survey conducted by the CDC showed that 17% of high school students surveyed had seriously considered attempting suicide within the last year. One study showed that 41% of adolescents in gun-owning households report having easy access to a gun in their home. And as we discussed earlier, research shows that secure firearm storage is associated with a decreased risk of child firearm suicide. We do have a handout with more information, facts, and resources on child firearm suicide, and it includes the suicide prevention hotline. You can get this information from the school. Tell. That is the power of being smart. We've heard from people that because of Be Smart, they know to ask about the presence of guns before their children go to another person's home. That they have talked to family members about guns in the homes when they have recognized the role of guns in suicide, and that gun owners are modeling responsible behavior as a direct result of Be Smart. It's important that people who own and work with guns are a part of this conversation. Research shows that law enforcement, the military, and hunting and outdoor groups are particularly effective at communicating secure storage practices. So, who are you going to tell to be smart today? Let's go through the acronym again. Secure all guns in your homes and vehicles. Model responsible behavior. Ask about unsecured guns in other homes. Recognize the role of guns in suicide. And tell your peers to be smart. Thank you so much for spending your time here listening to the Be Smart presentation. And now we're going to hear from Captain Franklin.
Thank you, Ms. Fontaine. That was an excellent presentation. I greatly appreciate you coming down and presenting for us today. A lot of good information there. For more information on the Be Smart program, you can go to their website at besmartforkids.com or org. .com. So it's besmartforkids.com. So there's lots more information there available, and there'll also be handouts available at the police department and at the school district will also have some as well. So any of that information that you want, we will gladly provide for you, and it is available again on the website. So again, I'm Captain Scott Franklin. I'm with the Lawrence Police Department, and I have just a quick story I want to relay to you today. It kind of dovetails with Ms. Fontaine's presentation. We can talk about all the numbers and the national figures and all that stuff, but at the end of the day, when it hits close to home or when it hits home, it makes a world of difference. And some years ago, many years ago, actually, when I first got into law enforcement, I think I was maybe a year or two out of the academy. It was just a regular day, started off like any other. And apparently what had happened earlier in the day, which I found out later during the investigation, was that one of our children here in Lawrence had received a bad report card. And in the old days, we used to give the letter grades and all that stuff. Well, he did the old school deal of changing the F to a B. And I took that home. And of course, his father was home. I think his dad worked night shift and he was asleep. So when his dad got up, he presented his report card. And of course, his dad said, what have we done here? And the child, Dada didn't do that. Well, we're going to find out. We're going to go to the school and we're going to see, what the grade is. And so the dad didn't think he's more of it, went and got in the shower, getting ready for his evening to go to work. Well, unfortunately, the son, and we'll just call him Timmy, goes in and goes to where the gun was located, which was in a chest of drawers, top left drawer in the dad's bedroom. He had seen his father taken in and out many a times. And so he goes in while dad's in the shower, opens the drawer, takes the gun out, walks outside. He walked down to a little tree at the front of the property, and it's tough. And sat down, kneeled down in front of the tree, put the gun to his head and pulled the trigger. That's tough. This was a 9-year-old boy. I was the first to respond to the scene. As I rolled up, I saw the father standing in the middle of the yard, and he had a look on his face that I've never seen before. I've seen it since, unfortunately, but I'd never seen that look of terror and shock and horror and panic. And so I walked down where little Timmy was, and I watched him take his last breath. I've never forgotten that. I've been doing this all my life. I'm in my 25th year, and I've never forgot it. And I've never forgotten watching little Timmy take his last breath. I've never forgotten that on that report card he still had in the other hand, he had just written, "Sorry, Daddy." That boy didn't know what he was doing. He had no idea or concept of what happened once he pulled that trigger. It was a permanent solution to a temporary problem. And I talked to the father a little bit after that. Of course, he fell apart and he's since moved on. I think about him a lot. I think about him at least once a year. And I think about little Timmy and what maybe he would have done today or where he would be today. It's serious business. These are not toys. Like Ms. Fontaine said in her presentation, just simply hiding a gun is not securing the gun. That weapon needs to be secured. It needs to be locked away, and it needs to be out of reach of a child who has no concept of the act he's about to make commit. And this happened, back then in the 90s when this occurred with little Timmy, and it's happened, all the way up to recently when we had our incident at the elementary school, all the way up to last week in Greenville. And these kids still, they make snap decisions, and before you know it, your whole life's changed. Think about that. Think about, put yourself in that position. Hug your kid a little bit tighter tonight, because heaven forbid it could happen again. That's all I have for you today. I thank you so much for listening and for your time. Again, I'm Captain Franklin at the Lawrence Police Department. You can reach me there. If you want any of this literature about the Be Safe Project, give me a call. Stop by. We'll have a chat. Thanks. Have a good evening.